Hello and welcome back to In Pursuit of. I'm continuing my conversation with Shyam Khandekar, co-founder and director of My Liveable City, and he is in pursuit of making cities livable for all. So Shyam, tell me, in this making cities livable for all, what's your opinion about India and sustainability? And I suspect that many people don't even really understand what sustainable really is, right? In the longer term or in the shorter term. And what it means in terms of a city being sustainable and where do we stand?
See, the issue is that it's such a major problem that the government obviously has to have the right policies. And I'm sure there are lots of people in the government who understand this fully and policies are being made for it. The question is, are we seeing those implemented in the cities in which we live? And the answer to that is really sometimes quite depressing. Okay? To my mind, one of the major issues is the fact that we are just keeping on building and building and building. And we are losing the character of old cities, and we are building new cities, not with sustainable technology, etc. And we are losing out on the public space, which I talked about earlier, and actually leaving it basically empty for cars. So I think that accent on vehicular traffic, private vehicular traffic, and growth of that, and as against that, much more money needs to be put into public transportation. There's one very well-known mayor from, I think it was from Bogota in Colombia. I may be wrong in that, but his statement was great. He said, a developed country is recognized not by the fact that the poor have a car, but by the fact that the rich take the public transportation.
Wow.
Why don't we do that in India? That we have a public transportation of a quality so that people who, even if they can afford a car, don't buy the car, but take the public transportation.
I think in Delhi, they've really made an effort, but again, it's the last mile connectivity. It's hard to get to that public transport.
Correct. But that last minute connectivity is not possible because those roads are dominated by cars. So you can't walk down to the metro halt. So you will need a car again to drive down there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, all these public transportation lines which are coming up, that's a great move. So I hope, but the next thing is this last mile connectivity you're talking about. So we need to be consistent with that policy further and let people be able to walk very easily. Landscape, they put trees so that it's shaded, right? So people can walk down to these metro halls.
That's absolutely right. But in terms of sustainability, what helps a city be sustainable?
It's a lot of things. So it's the mobility, but it's the sort of construction which you do. It's one of the main things is also related to how a city is built on the natural ground on which it is there. So when the water falls, can the water be reused instead of it just sort of flowing down to the river? Because we have water shortage, okay? So those sustainability means also that the buildings which you have can be used for different functions. So you don't have this system of creating just housing area here and working areas there, because then you need mobility. People need to so it's about planning, okay? So it's about a whole lot of things together, which makes something. And then this is all physical. Next to that, you need social sustainability, right? Which means that people feel comfortable about things and they don't have to move all over the place. So it's a very broad question, that one. Very, very complex. I'm not trained enough to answer that, to tell you the truth.
Okay. People complain about that the government is not doing enough for sustainability, or the city is so dirty, or the roads are too big, or there's too much traffic. But what can citizens do, when it comes to creating a livable city?
So I think complaining is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. When we created this organization, My Livable City, I remember insisting on having the word "my" in front of it. Because I said, if we have to create livable cities, people have to have a sense of ownership of their cities too. So what I mean is that the government can have certain policies, but citizens who are living in those cities also need to contribute one way or the other. It's also their city. There are examples where people from other countries where people have, for example, an infrastructure which is built for a private car, by demonstrating by activism, got it converted into pedestrianized areas. Okay.
Nice.
So we could do that in this country. We could easily, sacrifice a couple of roads somewhere and create more public spaces out of it. A very interesting example on the front of housing is it from Netherlands. Netherlands is known, even within the European context, for social housing. And when I mean social housing, it means low-cost housing, which is rented. It's not owned by the people who live there. It's rented by housing corporations at rates which are considered reasonable. Okay? 1/3 of the housing stock in the country is social housing in Netherlands. And that is owned by so-called housing corporations. These are organizations which have been set up specially for this. Now, 100 years back, 110 years back, Netherlands had slums. If you went to Amsterdam, it was full of slums. The situation was similar to what we have just now sometimes in some Indian cities. The government started a policy, and then civic societies, interest groups, some rich industrialists, they all joined hands and they created these housing corporations. Churches, religious organizations also. But then they used the religious organization not to push their religion, but basically to do something for the society back. They are really a symbol of how, next to the government, all sorts of interest groups, civic societies, etc., can join hands and do something really big.
Right.
So that's a great example too.
Wow. So I don't think people must have even thought about that they could contribute towards housing for the low-income group. So tell me, Shyam, what have been the pivotal moments for you? You've seen so much in other countries, and you grew up in India, and some aha moments maybe.
When I was studying at IIT Kharagpur, this was in the late 60s and early 70s, I was studying architecture. And I was totally enamored by that profession. I was a good student, very good student. I got the department medal. I wanted to be an architect, like who really just kept on designing buildings and detailing and everything. I was very passionate about it. And in the first year after that, I got a couple of commissions to design things. And I designed those buildings. And I very quickly realized that the environment within which these buildings were being built was hopeless. And there was nothing I could do about it. And suddenly I realized that architecture, I was disenchanted by architecture by itself. I just thought it's no use designing these little gems which are in a pool of dirt and mess. So I went on and studied housing, which was larger scale. Then I went to the UK and studied urban design with a lot of landscape in it. And then I came back to the Netherlands and I did urban planning. So I sort of broadened my perspective. And all this happened because I thought that's the only way we can make our cities better. So that was one aha moment. Then the other one was when I came back to India after having practiced in the Netherlands for about 25, 30 years, which is about 15 years back. India, this growth story had started, but many of our cities were getting destroyed. So I really felt terrible when I would see the degradation which was happening. That is when, fortunately, I got a chance to come and design a big project here. And the big advantage in India is that, because that was the first project which I did, which was called Nirlon Knowledge Park in Mumbai. So in that area of 10 hectares, 35,000 people work. And if you see their working conditions, they're fantastic. They're comparable to anywhere else in the world. So we have some very good entrepreneurs who let these things happen, who want the best in India compared to the rest of the world and in our cities. Unfortunately, the issue is that it's what we call island urbanism. So little bits in cities which are great, but they're not properly connected.
Sure.
The rest of the city is still having this problem. But hopefully we'll get over it.
I hope that in future projects that you're able to create much larger spaces, which affect many more people.
Yes.
You said that you've been doing a project which is going on since 35 years.
Yes.
So how do you stay motivated through this? Do you feel, nothing is changing?
Strangely, in private life, I'm sometimes very impatient. But in professional work, which I do, and I understand cities, I think time is a factor we just have to take care of, but sometimes take advantage of. Sometimes when things take a long time, they become also better. So the long-term projects, which are many of them which I do, I notice I do not have the wisdom at the beginning of a project to say, in 35 years, what should happen. So what I start doing is, we start moving in the right direction. And sometimes the slow process of growth allows me to incrementally keep on increasing the quality. Most of these projects I'm involved over the years. So Alembic, I've been now involved for about 10 years. Nirlon, more than 10 years in India. Now I'm just started working on a large project in Mumbai again. So I've learned that patience is not always a bad thing. It gives you a chance actually to improve.
Interesting. And how would you say that you've changed in this process after My Livable City, let's put it, after, starting that?
Oh, yes.
And after starting the Daida Awards?
I think I have changed simply by the fact that I've learned so much. And if you see some of these young kids, particularly, when they come and tell the stories and things they want to change, it is so refreshing to see them do that. It energizes me a lot. Also, every time we do a publication, and I'm still chief editor-in-chief of that magazine, and we have a theme, I have to read a lot before we actually go and start doing the issue. And I have a very knowledgeable colleague who is a professor at the University of Southern California, Vinayak Bharne. And two of us would discuss things, and then other people in the team too. And it's enriched my life greatly. So you might say that I'm doing it all for my selfish purpose at the end.
That's okay.
I didn't start with that idea, but
After starting the magazine, My Livable City, and you've learned so much, is that one thing that you wish would change in this development landscape of India?
so many of our issues of cities, they are based on inequity and injustice and a society in which there's too much difference between the people at the bottom of the pyramid and the top. The more egalitarian society we have, the better our cities will be, the better our public spaces will be, the happier people will be. So the last book which I wrote together with Professor Bharne, it's called Streets for All. Like I said, that book is streets occupy 25 to 40% of the area of a city. So if you fix the streets, you can fix the city, basically.
Right.
Okay. So in that, we have given 50 examples from all over the world of how streets have been changed or redone in a way so that all segments of society feel comfortable there. Sometimes it is the old we are talking about. Sometimes it is the children. Sometimes it is the gender issues of women who feel unsafe. And all these can be taken care of if you think that these are the issues which you want to solve. In design, you can take care of it. So that book talks about it, Streets for All, by My Livable City. And we have examples from different parts of the world, because all these issues are not only Indian issues. These are issues in so many parts of the world. The fact is that if you can make streets accessible to all, then basically, if it is safe to be on streets, then people can go from their home to another place to work.
If it was safe, then girls would not be forced to stay at home.
Correct.
Thank you so much. It was, really nice talking to you. And also, for me, it was such a learning because, my understanding of what a city should be like and what, citizens can do, all this was limited to some, things that we think of like, oh, don't litter, don't do this. So thank you so much. Great talking to you. And thank you for coming on our show.
My pleasure.